And I believe the Mexicans had set their camp up on the side of the opposite side, or the side of the river where the Texas Army was. So they didn't have the river for defense. The river was actually at their back. And the Texas Army just ripped through their camp. And there was also Tejanos that were a part of that battle as well, which Sam Houston initially didn't want the Tejanos to fight with them because he was afraid that the Texians might turn on them. And they had done something, I believe they put a card in their hats that distinguished them from the Mexican Federals, and they portrayed that in the movie, which I thought was a nice touch. The Battle of San Jacinto only lasted 20 minutes, and the entire Mexican army was destroyed, and many of their top commanders, including Santa Anna, were captured. There were definitely acts of no mercy from the Texans, but Sam Houston wanted Santa Anna alive, and he wanted to show that he was the bigger man and that the Texans were, more honorable than the Mexicans. So even despite that the Texans wanted to kill Santa Anna on the spot, Houston refused, and he was able to get Santa Anna to grant Texas independence from Mexico on very favorable terms right on the spot. And that's in a nutshell the entire movie.
All right. Yeah. Very good wrap up. And there you are. Texas, for a while, remains an independent nation. I believe in Great Britain, there was actually a consulate of the Republic of Texas, which has been turned into a restaurant that you can go there today.
Oh, that's cool.
So whatever the name of the restaurant is has something to do with the consulate of the Republic of Texas. There were Texas diplomats. They're probably planning to set up different embassies across Europe. But then it becomes a state, and the rest is history. I didn't get a chance to look this up. There's the common fact I've heard that the Texas flag is the only flag that's legally allowed to fly equal to the American flag due to a term of Texas joining the Union. I've heard somewhere that that's made up. It's custom to place a state flag before the national flag, but there's nothing preventing a state flag being flown at the same height. It might be custom and nothing legal. So that's my little bit of Texas historical trivia.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that Texas can secede at any time, or that it can split into 4 states. A whole bunch of things like that are questionable.
Six Flags Park, named that because there were 6 sovereign flags that flew over Texas in its history. Spain, France, Mexico, Texas, the Confederacy, and the United States. There you are.
Yeah, that's a cool little fact, too.
So, what do you think, Steve? I guess there's a lot of liked about this movie, so what were some of your favorite things?
I loved that the characters were really well played. They had a really good cast. I thought that, you can't get enough Jason Patric. Patrick Wilson's pretty good. Billy Bob Thornton as Davy Crockett's one of the best of all times, and one of Thornton's best roles, I think. And it was a beautiful movie. It was shot somewhere in Texas. You can see they did put a lot of money into the movie. The sets are really good. The clothes are really good. I mean, I think the clothes were pretty period, and I think they spent a lot of time on making the clothing as period as possible. And they did a really good job of showing the Mexican side as well. They showed Santa Anna as kind of buffoonish, kind of clownish, which he kind of was. I mean, that's part of he was a bigger than life character, and they'd maybe play that up a little bit, but he was a complicated guy. Yeah,
there's a lot to unpack, and I think from something I read is part of the reason there was a lot of money in the set design is that Ron Howard was originally set by the studio to direct the movie. For whatever reason, he backed out, but with a bigger name director, you could probably also get full-fledged A-listers. So this is set in the early 2000s-ish, whoever would have been big there, Brad Pitt, Russell Crowe, whoever, some marquee star to be there. You don't quite have that with this movie, so with less money having to be paid out to an A-lister, then you can spend more on the actual film production and the set design and costumes and other stuff.
Yeah, I think they said that Russell Crowe was going to be Sam Houston, and I think Dennis Quaid played a much better Sam Houston than Russell Crowe would have.
Yeah. Which, I thought Master and Commander, that would have been another film possibility for the series, which Russell Crowe was in. That's neither here nor there. But
yeah, he's done his fair amount of historical pieces. Oh, yeah, and Dennis Quaid is from Texas. He's from Houston. So I think it'd be pretty... a lot of the actors actually were Texans. Billy Bob Thornton I think he's from either Texas or he might be from Arkansas. But there were some other Texan actors in there as well.
Nice. Any other high points you think for this film?
I think that those are the big ones that I really liked. Is that it was overall probably about as accurate as you can get in a major motion picture, and that the battle scenes were accurate and it was fun to watch. I think they balanced those two things out as well as any movie, really.
Yeah, and something I like too is that it captures the epicness of the event and why we remember it, but it also doesn't make it out to be something that it wasn't, and this archetypal moment where the characters are practically looking into the future and speaking of the significance of this moment and making significance when it didn't exist. And what I mean by that is, from what I've read of the John Wayne movie, you mentioned that it had created perceptions of the Alamo that have stayed in the American conscious. And one point is that the characters seem to... They purposely decide to stay and not try to sneak out of the Alamo or go over a wall one night, with the idea that they can slow down the Mexican army and give Sam Houston enough time for total victory. You mentioned earlier that Goliad probably had much more to do with that than the Alamo, since the Alamo simply wasn't that much more. It wasn't a major fortification. There weren't that many people there. Incredible symbolic value, but in terms of overall military strategic value, much smaller. And so the John Wayne movie doesn't get that. I think this one captures the... not that it was meaningless, but I think the soldiers they were more just trapped in. It's not like they had a courageous, symbolic, decision to stand and fight. So that's something there that I think it would be easy to kind of gloss over and miss on. But
it's been a long time since I saw the John Wayne version, but he did one of his I do remember his classic looking out into the horizon and giving the prophetic speech, the classic John Wayne. We saw it in The Conqueror. He did it in The Green Beret.
He's like speaking with destiny itself as he's talking. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's John Wayne, and they did not do any of that in this movie.
Right. So what would you say to make it better?
I think to make it better, now the Alamo, that's obviously the money. That's what everybody remembers. But I think if there was a way that the Goliad massacre could get fit in there, I think that's really important. The battle cry at San Jacinto was not just remember the Alamo. It was remember the Alamo, remember Goliad. Goliad was huge. And I think that that's really... if they could have maybe, now you're talking about getting back into miniseries country. I think I would like to see a little bit more about the Mexican side, especially how they got themselves mobilized to do a really incredible march through the entirety of Mexico to get to Texas. That would have been really interesting. And just a little bit more about Goliad.
Hey everyone, Scott here. One more brief word from our sponsors.
Yeah, I think I really don't have that many arguments because, for example, the movie does do a pretty good job of showing the Mexican side. So Juan Seguin, the main Tejano ally, he works with them to fight the dictator, and one thing in the movie is that Santa Anna, it somehow makes a point that he kills prisoners because he fears that Mexico's independence could be taken away if their grandchildren are ruled by Americans. That seems more like him making a prophetic statement where he's somehow speaking to future tensions between Mexico and the United States, but his actions were more just his policy of maybe a scorched earth. I guess you could call it a Sherman's March to the Sea, thinking, or Curtis LeMay, the general who architected the firebombing of Tokyo, that let us do harsh now so that we can save lives in the future, which is one philosophy of how to conduct warfare. But it wasn't for any sort of let's do this now for the future of Mexican-American relations. That's a small quibble because really, I think, a lesser director and a lesser screenwriter would have just stuffed this to the gills with contemporary commentary on, I don't know, the immigration debate, because like we said, there's that low-hanging fruit of Americans coming illegally into Mexico. And that's why I hate Kingdom of Heaven so much, because when I was writing up a description of that first series, I wrote, Legolas the elf travels to the Middle East to create universal harmony between Muslims and Christians. And he might as well wear a shirt that says tolerance or coexist for how anachronistic he is, because there's a great story to be told of Crusades. And it's religious violence. Religious violence is terrible, but
it makes a good story.
Yeah, there's something to be gained by understanding why people in the past did things, even if you don't agree with it, so you can be transported to another world. But a lazy writer is, I'm going to make a commentary on the Iraq War, the 2005. Well, why not just make a Iraq War movie and then do it that way? And the Alamo, a lesser director, could have made a direct allegory for U.S.-Mexico relations and the immigration debate, but it didn't do that. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think it was a good period piece that stuck to the history. And I would just highly suggest people go watch it. It's available on all the streaming services, etc. I think sometimes it's even available on Netflix for free. So I would definitely go watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, anything else on the Alamo?
No, I think we're good. I think I made the case that it's a movie that people should go and watch, and I think they're going to love it.
Absolutely. All right, in the next episode, we're going to talk about another movie that was loved, specifically by me. We're going to look at the 2014 schlock masterpiece, Dracula Untold. All right, well, that wraps up our exploration of the past for this episode. As always, I want to thank the Knowlton's Rangers, especially our spy masters, Todd Warren, Jake Harrington, Beverly Engel, Bill Ivey, Joyce Norman, Tyler from Colorado, Josh Reddick, Baron Fraser, Chris from Maine, Carl from Norway, Moondoggy from Ohio, Rick Knowlton, Vic and Irene, Mike from New York, Michelle, and Marlene. I'll explain what that is in a second. If you like the show and want to help it grow, there are 4 easy ways for you to do it. 1, like and subscribe to the show on the podcast player of your choice. This helps spread the word about the show. 2, join our Facebook group. Here we can keep the discussion going about new episodes, and you can talk about what you like and didn't like. And you can find this group if you just search for History Unplugged on Facebook. 3, we have an online store with t-shirts, phone covers, and other accessories featuring awesomely bad history puns that were crowdsourced by you, the audience. And you can find that if you go to public.com and look for History Unplugged, or you just go to historyonthenet.com and look for our store there. 4, and this is really the best way to dive deep with History Unplugged, and that's to become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. If you know your American history, you know the Knowlton's Rangers were an elite spy and reconnaissance group in the American Revolutionary War, but it's also the name of the membership program of History Unplugged. You can join at 3 levels. If you join at the level of Scout, you can hear all the episodes of History Unplugged completely ad-free and get early access to new episodes, at least a week early. If you join at the Intelligence Officer level, you get special bonus episodes, like a 10-part series on the World War II hero Audie Murphy, a multi-part series called Ottoman Lives about different people in the Ottoman Empire, and a series called Rendezvous with Death that looks at biographical profiles of Americans who went to fight in World War I before America entered the war. The last level is Spy Master, where you get all that stuff, but you also get 3 hardcover history books, Forging a President, How the Wild West Created Teddy Roosevelt, Race to the Top of the World, Richard Byrd and the First Flight to the North Pole, and The Last Fighter Pilot, the true story of the final combat mission of World War II. Another bonus is, you can choose a history topic for me to focus on for an entire episode that can go up to an hour, and I'll answer whatever question you have for me, and you get a shout out at the end of each episode. If you want to learn how to become a member of the Knowlton's Rangers,